Hello, everyone. Happy World Product Day. I'm very honored to be able to host this event out of the north of Denmark, Aalborg. And we are one of the many, many cities that are ready to broadcast to the whole world and celebrate the craft of product management today. I will shortly go through our slides. And in a minute, I will present all our speakers to you, but I would just love to run through the slides and tell you what's coming up. Let me just find my slides. The technicalities are a little bit difficult when you're live. So today is the 10th anniversary of Product Tank, and this is actually an event that started 10 years ago in London, and it was a very private event. But right now, we are many cities, many time zones, and we are ready to celebrate all over the world. I must admit, I started celebrating this event very early with the Product Tank in Brisbane, and it was amazing to follow all the different product tanks throughout the day. We have an exciting agenda, but before we jump to the agenda, I would just like to really put this video onto the screen and say Happy World Product Day. I would like to present our hosts at Product Tank Aalborg. That's me. My name is Julia. I'm product manager, and I have a co-organizer, Christian. He's also a product manager, so no surprise that we are running this thing. And I would really love to present our speakers. We have Gino joining from Barcelona. This is a true global event. We are based locally, but we are cooperating globally. He will talk about managing innovation. And then Frederick will join the stage and talk about creating an outstanding culture and work environment in product companies. So without further ado, I would love to bring our speakers and my co-organizer to the stage so you can say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Great, guys. So Gino, you're up. I'm going to add your slides to the screen now.
Fantastic. I'm going to switch tab and we can
I see you guys, you other guys later.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you everybody for being here with us. I know the offer was pretty intense of content from product tanks across the globe, so I hope you will enjoy this session. So my talk is about innovation. It's a very interesting topic, but before jumping into the presentation, a bit about me. I'm Italian. I live in Barcelona for almost 9 years now. I've been working in different companies. You can see those in this slide. I've been working, advising, or even funding some of those companies. Spoiler alert, my experience as an entrepreneur was a huge failure, but I learned so much, so I don't regret anything of that experience. And I'm now the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Abitissimo. Abitissimo is a marketplace that allows you to find professionals for home improvement, from interior design to repairs, plumbers, or full renovation of your house. You can find professionals that can help you and assist you. We operate in different markets, south of Europe, LATAM, and we are part of a bigger group that's called HomeServe PLC, based in UK. Also, notably, I'm the organizer of Product Tank Barcelona. So I'm kind of leaving my team organizing the competing event from Barcelona, and I'm very happy, however, to be here with the team of Product Tank Aalborg. But let's jump into the topic of the day, innovation. And I couldn't have started in a better way, I think. We are all waiting for the historical event that is going to happen in just a few hours. We had a lot of debate internally today in my team. Is this real innovation? Is Elon Musk the new Leonardo da Vinci or whatever? It was very interesting, however, to discuss innovation from different angles. And see, I find myself explaining to my team how do I see innovation. And I see innovation in a very little romantic way, I will say, because for me, innovation is survival. It's not about doing fancy things. It's about surviving in the market. Now, as the law of diffusion of innovation states, companies go through different stages. They scale, they reach maturity, and they eventually decline. And so only businesses that are able to innovate continuously are able to keep growing over time and over different S-curves. I was reading a few days ago this article about the only few companies from Fortune 500 that are still alive after 50 years. There are only 60 that were still part of the Fortune 500 index after 50 years. That means that the remaining 440 companies either didn't make it or they're much smaller now. So starting from that, it seems easy and understandable that companies will invest a lot of effort and money and focus in innovating. The reality, however, at least in my experience, is quite different. It's very risky. It's very complicated to do innovation. And that's why there's so much M&A, I think, around. There are so many companies that prefer to simply go out and buy startups when they are successful, the ones that are disrupting their markets and so on, which is a bit the story of Abilitissimo. Abilitissimo has been acquired by the OMSEV group because the group realized that they needed to innovate, and so they acquired Abilitissimo as long as other companies in the same digital space. But really, the problem that we have in all companies is that, in my opinion, there is a real fear of the innovation. And I think that as soon as companies go beyond the stage of a pure startup, as soon as you get some money, seed money or Series A, you enter into a wheel like an hamster, and you need to keep delivering at a pace that distracts you to perform real innovation. So it's about risk, it's about cost, it's about uncertainty, subjectiveness. I think it's another problem connected with innovation. It's very difficult sometimes to be objective in prioritizing things because you're maybe entering into a new market or exploring a completely new problem. So it's very difficult also to make decisions with the usual tools that you have in a traditional business. And eventually, also timing is very unpredictable for innovation. And all those things are not very compatible with the concept of a company that has to report quarterly results to investors. And so I see also a problem in terms of not being fit for budgeting or forecasting when we talk about innovation. It's very difficult to map out how this innovation project is going to pan out in a year or so. And so for all these reasons, already a few years ago, in one of the companies I was working, literally 7 years ago, I started working in this framework that I used then in another company I worked for, and now more recently in the last 3 months, I implemented the same framework in Abilitissimo. And the framework is kind of a oxymoron in terms, because we're trying to manage something that should be disruptive and chaotic, etc. So it's a very difficult process, but it's something that I recognize we need in companies to, first of all, improve allocation of resources. We have people, especially in our domain in digital products, and we need to make sure that those people are allocated where they can deliver the more value. And the process and framework also allow us for objectiveness in decision making. commitment. This is not secondary when you are dealing with other priorities. You want to make sure that the leadership team, for example, at your company, are making the commitment of allocating those resources, that those resources will not be pulled out at some point because other teams or other projects will require it. And eventually cost control and risk diversifications. It's very ambitious. Again, I understand it's very ambitious trying to control all these variables with a framework. But likely, we have also a fantastic diagram, which, I mean, you cannot make a product-related presentation without having a Venn diagram. So here it is, our magic three boxes diagram, where we try basically to balance out risk, cost, and time. In fact, time boxing is another key element of this framework. We want to give enough time, but not too much time to the ideas that we are pursuing, because we know that we can easily fall in love with those ideas, but we need to be very objective in making decisions, even though sometimes those decisions are hard, but we need to be able to also unplug some of those ideas and be objective in these decisions. So let's review the framework. This framework is initially based on a process called StageGate that was developed in the 80s. I mean, it's a project management process methodology, is something made in the 80s to actually project manage industrial or civil engineering projects. So how these relate with digital products? Actually, I find it very useful for digital projects, because if we combine this framework with agile and lean philosophy, we can get something pretty powerful. The idea is we have different stages and different gates. Gates are moments of review. So imagine you have an idea. The first stage is concept. You take this idea and you make this idea better. You make it in a format that can then eventually be analyzed in the first gate, concept approval. Then you go to the prototype stage. Then there is another gate, hypothesis validation, and so on, so on, so. We're going to review those stages and gates more in detail in a minute. Why this framework is so powerful? First of all, because it allows us to control risk and costs. At the beginning, we are just dealing with an idea on a PowerPoint or even just paper. And so the cost associated with that idea is very little. Also, the risk is very high. And so the more we progress through the stages and the gates, the more we reduce the risk and increase also the cost and the resources allocation to each idea. Ultimately, let's not forget that we live in an agile and lean world. So we want to have a learning loop. Those ideas don't move forward only in this process. They can go back. We can learn, we can pivot, we can go back to the whiteboard and rethink our ideas and being able to pivot over time. We are just launching the first idea in MVP stage at Abilitissimo. This idea went through the concept and prototype stages, and I'm very happy how quickly we moved on with this first idea, which is now in MVP stage. There's a small team of 3 people working on it. And we quickly realized that if we were missing the prototype moment, we would have made a very silly decision. We were able to quickly identify in the prototype stage that we were wrong on a very important assumption, and we pivoted the idea. Now we are building an MVP that has higher chances of success. But let's review, first of all, the gates. Gates are formal meetings. It's actually a very formal moment. You know, the way this framework is inspired is kind of having a incubator, a startup incubator within your company. And so you want to act as a review committee into the gates, as the investor that is deciding to invest or not in an idea or to move it to the next stage. So our formal meetings, and that means that teams need to take the responsibility to present to the review committee their findings, their data, their advancements on the development of that idea, but also a mini business case for new resources that they will need to go to the next stage. Who composed the review committee? My recommendation leaders from the organization. And when I say leaders, I don't mean necessarily the executive team or the hippo in the room. We need to have people in that review committee that are experts of the matter, and they can change depending on the subject, but we need to be able to have in that room people that can really review that idea from all the different angles and make a recommendation if we should move forward or go back or simply kill that idea. Let's now review the stages. Again, as you remember, we start with concept. In concept, we have a simple basic idea. And so we want to make sure that we review that idea from different perspectives. What is the opportunity problem that we are trying to solve? What is the solution that we are proposing? Why us? Which competitive advantage do we have as a company trying to solve this problem compared to any other startup out there? And financial/business case, business canvas, it doesn't need to be a very detailed business case, but simply think of a napkin. Are you able to write down on a napkin what will be the financial driver of your idea or the business model? Can you explain it in a so simple way? And eventually, in the concept stage, also identify what are the key hypotheses that need to be tested in the following stages. And for me, it's very simple. Identify the 1, 2, 3 hypotheses that, if were false, will basically destroy completely the idea. Tips for the concept stage. Standardize. It's very useful to use a standard template because, again, remember, we want to homogenize and add objectiveness in the way we decide which idea moves forward and which not. So having the same template with the same questions and the same answer allows you to ease up the comparison between different ideas. I use business model or lean canvas. What was very powerful for me was the 10-slide speech by Guy Kawasaki. I recommend you look out for it because it's very useful. It allows you to basically describe your idea in a very complete way in only 10 slides. And it, by the way, it's not random that we're using a pitch for a startup in this process, because, again, remember, this process looks very much like the process that you will go through if you were a startup funder and looking for funding and trying to convince your investors to invest more into your project. The next stage is prototype. So you go through concept, you present the idea, the committee decide to fund you for the next stage, which is prototype. Now, the advantage of the prototype stage is that we don't put development resources in this stage. This is time from the designers or from a small team if the company has a dedicated team for that. Designers will dedicate some time to do some early validation and maybe some prototyping. The idea is really to try to use either quantitative or qualitative data that can be already available or that can be generated through research, interviews, surveys, or live prototyping to understand if those key hypotheses that we mentioned before are validated or not. The next stage is when we finally put a real team working on the idea. Ideally, in the prototype, you found some real evidence that your idea can move forward. Again, back to the example that we have now at Habitissimo, the team created a prototype and they went out surveying our users, and the response from the survey from the users was awesome. We had more than 85% of users interested in the core idea and the core functionality behind this new initiative. They also took the prototype, they did user testing, and they started already getting some feeling of what could be improved in the product. They presented the case to the committee, they were approved to the next stage, and now they are in the MVP stage. Now they have a team and they can start building the product. They have 6 months time, and they will use probably only 2 months building the MVP, because the real value of this stage is to be extremely fast and have as much time as possible to iterate. So they will develop this MVP, take the next 4 months of iterate and iterate over the initial MVP to make sure that we deliver on bringing back to the review committee real numbers, real data that will further allow funding this idea. Then we are almost done. The very final stage is ROI. In ROI, the marketing team is involved. We proved the real interest and key metrics in the MVP stage. Now it's time to prove the financial viability at scale. We want to see if our unit economics are still valid if we start growing the product. We want to understand how scalable is the product, and we want to make sure that our lifetime value over CAC is still compatible in this stage. And ultimately, if also this stage is surpassed, we go to the final stage, growth. The idea is now proven. The product or functionality is now part of the company portfolio or the company main product. Resources, in theory, will be allocated permanently. You have a new amazing product with all the validation done and ready to scale and grow, maybe international, for example. So this is the framework. It's very simple. And again, I went through, stressed some of the key elements. It's not a linear framework. Ideas will move back and forth. Some ideas will drop because they are not proven compared to the expected outcome. Some others will pivot and will come back. But what's really important is understanding what's the meaning of each of those stages. And again, I think of the concept stage as the convince me stage. The question we should ask ourselves is, if our hypotheses were true, will we have a scalable business? Prototype is all about evidence. What evidence do we need to prove the problem solution fit? MVP is about results. What results do we need to prove the product market fit? And then my favorite, ROI, show me the money. This is really about proving that the product can grow and that can grow viable in a financial perspective. And then eventually the growth stage, the ones that make all investors happy. How can we keep growing the business? Again, one last slide about the framework. Remembering you that this framework is meant to reduce risk while we introduce increased costs. And ultimately, this table is based on my experience over 3 companies of really what is the typical investment that you need for each stage. So for example, for the prototype stage, a team size of 3 to 4 people in 2-4 weeks time frame should be able to come back to the review committee with data proving if it's worth to move to the MVP stage or not. Then you can see that the more we advance until the ROI stage, the investment in terms of people, in terms of skills also that you put in this team is growing, and potentially also the time frame is growing. And these are usually the metrics that we focused in our experience. Again, I think if you ever want to use this methodology, I highly recommend to make it yours, to take this as a good starting point and make your own version of it. And that's it. I want to thank you all. If you want to read more about the methodology, here is the link to a Medium article. And probably, hopefully in the future, I will also write a follow-up from this initial article. But I think that article is already a good explanation, more detailed explanation, hopefully, of what I gave to you in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Thanks, Gino. That was really nice to hear your thoughts on how to do innovation on a continuous basis. I at least learned a lot from this framework, and it seems to be ready to adopt for almost any company. I would like to encourage everyone once again to post any questions to Gino you might have into the chat and to the presentation about innovation management. In the meantime, I hope that we can chat ourselves and deep dive into a few of the things that you mentioned. At least I have one question, so I would like to ask that. MVP is one of my favorite topics because that concept is usually misunderstood and sometimes misused, and I try to go away from that concept and call it something else. But really, in your presentation especially, it's really difficult to jump or to cut MVP stage. It seems to be very important, especially in terms of, deciding whether to move on or whether to go backwards or whether to stop working on the idea altogether. Could you share some of your experience? I mean, what is the most often outcome of the MVP stage? Do you guys go back to prototyping stage and rework some things when results are not satisfying? How often do you scrap your ideas based on MVP performance? And what is a good MVP?
Maybe I should start with a very sad statistic. In three companies I use this. Well, Abitissimo, I'm there only from 3 months, so I will give time to the Abitissimo team to see how much we will progress and how many ideas will move forward to the next stages and so. But in personal experience, only 2 ideas in one for each different company progresses up until the very late stage of growth, basically. But this is by design. We have a very wide funnel at the beginning. We want to capture as many ideas as possible. In fact, one of the key elements of the framework that we adopted, for example, in Abitissimo, is trying to get as many ideas as possible from the organization, because we really want to have everybody involved in the innovation. And then there is this core team that is helping shape those ideas in a comparable form. And when you get to the MVP stage, you already have some very important validation from the previous stages. Still is a very critical moment, because it's the moment in which you are really trying to validate with quantitative data that your idea is worth moving to the next stage. And the most difficult part for me, for the teams, for everybody in this moment is actually what happens before, during the gate. During the gate, you need to have people senior enough in that context to help the team really identify that one metric that matters. And this is important for every stage. You really need to have one metric that matters. And you need to try to prove that you can get there. And if you don't have that North metric, that success criteria, then you're open to interpretation. Is the MVP working or not? If we are trying to prove virality, if this is our key metric for the MVP, and we didn't prove virality, but you know what? The product is nice, we should keep it. These are the mistakes you should avoid doing. And so, again, sometimes it's being brutal. It's about accepting the facts, the data, but it's extremely important to be very sharp on making those decisions.
Right. Makes total sense. One follow-up question on deciding based on the data. I mean, data sometimes shows us what is happening, but it does not necessarily tell us why. How do you get that why feedback? Do you then do some qualitative research based on the results that you've got, or do you rely on the data alone?
So I have a nice anecdote from my time at ABA English. It doesn't have to do strictly with the framework. It was a problem with the key product that we have. ABA English is an app to learn English. And so we had a very thorough onboarding. And one of the questions during the onboarding was which level of English you were already at. And this was a very simple step in the onboarding. If we're only looking at the quantitative data, that was very much a no-brainer. And basically, we only had like 2-3% drop off of users in that step. So fantastic. No need to optimize that step in the onboarding. But then we realized later on that users were abandoning the use of the app very early, like after the first or second lesson. Doing qualitative research allowed us actually to understand that point specifically in the onboarding was very problematic. It was very difficult for a user to underestimate or overestimate their level. If you're underestimating your level, you are facing in all cases, you were facing a level of lessons that weren't correct for your real level. We introduced pretty long, unfortunately, level test in the onboarding. And yes, we accepted to have a higher drop-off of users, but the overall engagement and retention after was way, way better, like 3 digits improvement better. So this is a small anecdote of how and why you should always consider qualitative and quantitative data, especially in a framework like this.
True. Thanks a lot. I have 2 questions from the audience that I would like to bring. One is to you personally, another one is more general, but we can all chip in with the good answers, and then we'll give the stage over to Frederick. So the first question, I will bring it onto the screen. The model that you described seems ideal for creating new standalone products. Do you also see it working for validating significant innovation, disruption for existing products? What's your thoughts?
Perfect. It's actually very interesting because this happened a couple of times that we started with a new product idea with many doubts, actually, if this new product idea should be separated or not from the core product experience. So, in all these cases, what we ended up with is a new functionality for the existing product. I think it's nice to think in isolation because you don't have all the, imagine if you want to develop something new using the core product's assets, and so you have so many stakeholders to please, you have so many rules to respect, and you may not move fast enough. So I think it's very nice to use this framework, validate the idea, and then eventually it makes more sense from a business perspective or user perspective to bring that back into the core experience. But I think the framework can be very useful also for this type of scenario. It simply allows you to have a faster discovery and testing process.
Cool, thanks. I hope that answered the question. Otherwise, please, guys, follow up in more comments, and we can take them at the end of all our talks. One more question here from Chicago, USA. Great. Are you using this framework as the first in, first out methodology when evaluating one concept at a time?
A good question. Actually, my fault not having explained this better in the slides. We try to have more ideas in the pipeline. So imagine if you have like 10 ideas in the concept stage, then you may have like 3 or 4 in prototype, 2 or 3 in MVP, etc. It really depends on the way you implement the methodology in the company. In Softonic, the first company I implemented this methodology, we had a dedicated team. So it was very much connected to the capacity of this team to handle different ideas at different stages in different moments. And we had these metrics in which we had basically every idea, the stage and the requirements, the cost allocation, and so. In my last company, AB English, we decided not to have a dedicated team. So it was very much time that we were stealing from other teams. And so we were much more strict on the time allocation. We were trying to be more precise on the number of ideas that we were allowing from one to another stage. And we created this sort of backlog between one stage and another. So we may have 3 brilliant ideas that we want to move to prototype. We will keep them in the backlog and we will start working in the prototype stage with the first one, and so and so. And now we are back to an hybrid model, actually. We have a core team in Abitissimo of 2 people managing the whole process, and they are pulling in people from the rest of the organization.
Cool.
And we don't know yet what's going to be their capacity because we just started, basically.
Great stuff.
I also have a question. If you can go to the cheat sheet slide. I was just wondering, because one of the kind of problems or the kind of challenges with the stage gate model is that it's really sequential, right? So you do things one step at a time and then you evaluate stuff. So I see a potential risk in waiting with, doing the growth test or doing the ROI test until you have an MVP, right? So you can waste a lot of time in the different stages if you're not doing things simultaneously. So one of my kind of things I would like your reflection on is why not, do the concept and then the prototyping stage and then you do the MVP ROI growth stage in kind of a simultaneous flow, so to speak, when possible, of course, but that you don't wait until you're at a great MVP product stage until you move to the next stage, because it could show up that you can't reach growth, or that you will never make money on this kind of product, so you just waste like 6 months of development time on something that you quickly find out is not financially ready for it.
It's a very good point, Christian. In the reality, what I saw happening is that there is actually a negotiation during the review committee, during the gates, between the team and the review committee, especially around time and resources. Because again, remember, the review committee is kind of an investor funding you for the next stage. And so there is a negotiation between resources and time. And so the team may think they need 6 months, and the review committee say guys, let's stretch it in 3 or 4 months. And so during this negotiation, I think you are, in my experience, you're also reducing part of this risk that you mentioned. There's also the other perspective. If one of those ideas is proven working at the first iteration, this happened. You don't need to necessarily iterate so many times or use 3 or 4 months of iterations. Maybe at the first or second iteration, you already get to the point where you are feeling confident. In those cases, we accelerated the process. In Abitissimos, what really happened, the prototype stage was so fast because we got such overwhelming response from the research that we moved very quickly into MVP.
Yeah. Great.
Cool. Guys, to speed things a little bit up, I would like to pose the last question in this section of our show, and then leave the floor for Frederick. But I already now brought Frederick to the stage because I think the question is very general. So let's chip in with some brainstorm or top of mind suggestions to this question. And that's the question about our art, craft of product management. Which books do we recommend today? What is the hottest? And how do we keep up with what's happening in the PM scene? So any first movers who has a good one?
I can try to go. I actually have a quite common one. I started to reread the Design of Everyday Things. I'm pretty design focused, so that makes sense, from Don Norman. But reading it every few years, it keeps changing your view on his thoughts, and it keeps expanding your mindset when you do design work. So it's not like a new fancy book, it's more like an old, more known book that I just reread again. Yeah.
Cool. Anything else?
For my case, I'm reading now From Good to Great. It's not actually specifically a product management book, but it's so far seems pretty interesting. It's something that we use in our group. So it's kind of something that I started reading because I needed to, but I'm actually enjoying it. My favorite book, however, in the last couple of years has been Sense and Response from Jeff Gotolf, especially because it speaks about innovation and culture and how you change the culture, and it's something I'm very passionate about. And maybe this is also a segue for Frederick, because I think the presentation is about culture, right?
Sounds like it. Yeah.
Super cool.
I would say, of course, something we always recommend is Inspired by Marty Kagan, right? Because it's really kind of the Bible of product management, kind of the modern way of looking at what product management is. And then another one that really ties into what you talked about, Gino, is a book called The Startup J-Curve by Howard Love. That talks about the different kind of sections you're at a startup. So what do you do when you're at scale? What do you do when you're at different kind of stages at a startup? I think that really kind of ties into what you talked about as well. Yeah.
Cool stuff. I have a couple of more on top of my mind, and then we're definitely shifting to you, Frederick. One that is top of my mind is the Lean Playbook by Dan Olsen. It's been around for a while, but I think it's also provides some great tools. Then I'm still loving Melissa Perry's The Build Trap book. evergreen ideas, evergreen advice. Is still having it on my bookshelf for frequent referencing. And not to push Marty too hard, but I think he has a cool book coming up, and he's been given a couple of talks on the new topic, the follow-up to Inspired, which is Empowered. And I really dig that concept of empowered teams. So the book is still not there, but there are talks, also on Mind the Product channel, I believe, on this topic. So definitely find those. They are really inspirational. And one that is not directly product management related, but still provides some good food for thought. That's the classic book by Richard Rumelt, Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. Gives some great ideas for product strategy formulations, at least. And now I think I would like to thank you, Gino, for an inspiring talk about managing innovation. That's hard thing about hard things. And now the floor is yours, Frederick. I'm looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you. Well, I can share my slides.
I will put your slides onto the screen now.
And please, can you confirm that it looks somehow decent?
It looks fantastic.
Okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the awesome presentation. Actually, I think I saw the first ideas in the first presentation. I think we're going to implement some of them. But yeah, well, today I'm here to talk about how to use interns for other things than getting coffee. And this is a thing that we have been using a lot of time on learning and also mastering within the company. And at the end, I have a little great tip on how to onboard your intern into being an awesome intern for your company and provide a lot of value. So first of all, quickly about me. My name is Frederik. I'm a UX designer at Boligportal. I actually started as an intern and then got hired into the company. So I'm pretty much the main story in the office, and then we started having even more interns afterwards. So quickly about the company, our mission, and the main one that people who know the company, is that we want to help tenants find their next dream home. And we're the biggest marketplace in Denmark doing that. We are the easiest and most reliable way of searching for an apartment or rental house in Denmark. Actually, we're also in Sweden, and also one of the big players there, top 3, if you ask me, and also if you look at the numbers. And that's the main focus for our company. But what some people don't know is that one of the last sentences in our mission is to help landlords rent out and administrate their rental homes. So what we actually do, 80% of our product development work is actually creating the best product for landlords, administrating and keeping an eye on the whole company that rents out apartments. We want to give them tools that makes it extremely easy. In this case that I'm showing currently on the slide, they're able to filter within the different conversations they get from tenants, and we try to understand these different use cases that they want to that they want us to help them with. And definitely this is one of them, having maybe 1,000 people contacting you about an apartment and then narrowing down the specific tenant you want. And that's where we create the most nerdy and most UX nerdy, but also create more of the UX development within the company. We actually this slide is also a bit in Danish, but we actually create much more complex products for the landlords as well. We create tools like creating digital contracts where they're able to do digital signatures and sending out SMS warning you that you have 2 days to sign this contract. And this is actually one of the things that we are trying to achieve by taking an analog industry and turning it into digital industry. If you look for the last 20 years of being a landlord, everything was on paper, and we want to move that into a more digital way of doing it. So people know Boligportal, that's the main company here in Denmark, and most people have visited our site, but we actually have this sub-brand that takes up most of our day and most of our product development focus, called Boligportal Business. And that completes the whole mission for our company. It's connecting tenants and landlords and helping create products for both of them in our day-to-day work. quickly about the company. We are about 60 people, and actually 20 of those people are in product/development. So that is also programmers and coders, and including people like business intelligence dudes, loving the numbers, living in Excel. And we also have a huge QA team, students coming in and testing these different products, which is extremely important for us because we have a product that a lot of people use in a short period of time. So it should really work on all devices. But one of the most important things we have is at the bottom of this slide is the interns. And I want to talk more about that. So we actually use interns for a lot of different things. One of the things that I want to talk about today is how we enhance our product development using interns for very special use cases. And why am I the guy talking about this? Well, we were so lucky to get the award for the best internship company in the whole Aarhus, which is quite a big city in Denmark for those people who don't know. And it was luckily my intern, Patrick, who is probably watching the live stream out there as well. Hello, Patrick. Shout out. And we got crowned as the best internship company. And we are so proud of this award. And that's also the reason why I want to share some of the things that we learned getting Patrick this amazing award. So, first of all, we are not perfect at having interns. We failed a lot in the past. So there's going to be a few references to things not going so well, but we see that as learning, of course. So the first case I want to talk about is, I briefly told you guys that we are in Denmark and Sweden. And for a previous amount of time, we want to go to Germany. And we actually managed to use interns help us a lot doing this movement to a new market. We decided to focus our hiring for interns onto finding people who maybe lived in Germany or speak German or have a bit of knowledge about the German culture. And we got Clara in, and she actually got hired afterwards. She started doing SEO work and translations and stuff like that, but she actually managed to be like the front person for us doing events in Germany and stuff like that. And one of the fun facts here is that we learned very quickly that we wanted to have some relationships with landlords in Germany. So we tried to call them. We used a Danish phone number. And when you call from Denmark to Germany with a Danish phone number, nobody picks up. Like we called over 100 people, nobody picks up. So, and also if you then get someone who picks up and you start speaking English, they will probably shut you down pretty quickly. So Clara got a phone and a German phone number and started calling these different landlords. And it was just like out of 100, maybe half of them would pick up the phone because it was a German number. And also half of them would actually talk with her because she could speak German. So that was actually a fun little thing that we learned where we could use interns, also helping her learn how to have customer relationships, but also helping us a lot, like knowing stuff about how to be a landlord in Germany so we can help create products for them. And she actually managed to go to different events, Expo Wheel in München, that is about like the prop tech community inside Europe, which is the theme of products we're working within. And she was the front figure from us, and because she could speak fluent German and tell stories about living in Germany, a lot more people would be interested in talking with her. And yeah, we one other story about product development for like get help from interns for product development for new markets is that when we wanted to expand in Sweden and enhance our product, we actually had a intern here and a few student helpers as well doing translations for the Swedish market. And they told us like, why do you guys don't have cabins on the marketplace? And we looked at them quite funny, like, cabins is not a thing. Like, we don't have that in Denmark. Is that really a thing in Sweden? And we actually quickly learned that if we didn't have that category of rentals in Sweden, we actually missed out of a lot of ads on our platform. So we added that, and we quickly saw within the first month a huge growth in ads that in this category. So that was also a great way of listening to your interns, providing feedback within the company, and enhancing the product from that feedback. The second thing I want to talk more nerdy about is how we enhance our maturity level within our design work, because this is actually where I'm focusing right now. My interns, because I'm also a UX designer, is mainly doing design work, and they're helping us growing as a design team within our company. When we look for interns, or when I look for interns, it's mainly UX and UI designers. There's a couple of reasons for that. It's because the schools in Denmark, and especially in Aarhus, are focusing on this UI and UX discipline. So it's a bit more easy to find candidates that are just like better out from the school. And that's also a thing that we're seeing if we are searching for specific positions for the internship. Maybe that decreases the amount of candidates, and then it's harder to find the real candidate that you want to work with for the next maybe half year sometimes. So we have had a ton of students and interns working with us, and a lot of different ones. This is Emil. He's a master student. We also have Alberte. She's a bachelor student. We had Urte. She's actually an international student. We tried to have bachelor students and mainly doing one-to-one mentoring. We also tried having team mentoring where they had multiple mentors within the company. And then at last here, ending his internship a couple of months ago and also got a job afterwards, we had Patrick. And we actually used a mix of everything, alone mentoring and team mentoring to help him have an awesome internship and also help us getting value from his work. So now I want to dive into more specific tips on how to pick out your interns and how to work with them when they get into the company. And it's really important for me to say here, because this is about humans. So there's not like a single correct solution. And this is also pretty much design focused. So you could have like a marketing intern where this couldn't work, but this is just important for me to say that this is not the solution, but it's maybe something that you can try to implement next time you get an intern. One of the first lessons that we found is that screening the intern before and doing the internship is extremely important. So before the internship, it's stuff like, are they passionate about the field that they're going into? Do they love design? Do they read books? Do they sit at home and do their own projects? Because that also is really important. Can they showcase projects that are outside the school? Because that really shows passion within that field. And it could also be marketing work. In this case, it's design. And you need to have some kind of passion for creating awesome projects and products. Doing the internship, you also need to screen them, because you need to see how they develop, you need to see how they learn and how they handle struggles. So one of the things, are they up for trying new stuff? Just trying concepts, trying weird little design tasks, because if they do that, they are mostly up for everything. And if you give them that opportunity and they really take it, maybe they have the opportunity to start on a real project later in the internship. And then I have this weird word for most people here, because it's rugbrødsarbejde, and it's a Danish word that I don't have an English word translation for, and it's basically extremely non-sexy and routine-based work that is really necessary to get done. So how do they handle when you give them this rugbrødsarbejde? Do they just say stop and try avoiding it, or do they attack it and actually get it done? Because this is important for them to learn that this is a part of just being a designer or PM. Everybody does it, so they should also do it. And how do they handle feedback and learning? That is also extremely important. And you can then like trying to adjust the internship to hit these markers. So why is screening so important? Especially during the internship, the screening is really important because you want to split up the work in different themes. And this is also the lesson 2 that we found. So the different themes of work is not like design work, marketing work, and sales work. It's more like trying new stuff, concepts, rugbrødsarbejde, doing non-sexy stuff that is really necessary for us to get a project out. And there's also real projects, the things that every intern wants to do is a real project that gets out there and touched by users. If we look at how a normal internship would start based on our onboarding of the intern, and we're going to talk about that later, it would pretty much look like this. It would be a ton of trying new stuff. It would be a middle ground of Rugbrødsarbejde, they need to do that, and a tiny bit of real projects, because we as a company can't really depend on an intern being finished with a design. So we need to give them a small amount, see how they do, and then they could maybe increase it a bit later on. And this is also what is happening mostly for our good internships, is that they take feedback in and they just eat the Rugbrødsarbejde, the non-sexy work. And doing that, we want still to keep the non-sexy work, because every employee does it and they also need to learn it. But we do less stuff of conceptual work and just trying stuff and putting them in real projects, helping us test, helping us providing design feedback and testing what the developers give us and stuff like that. If internship is not going that well, we can actually adjust it so we don't have to spend that much time giving fake projects to an intern. So we actually just say that, hey, this is new stuff, this is just concept, just try it out. And we don't have to like make up something, because we have a huge backlog of ideas that we want to try out that we don't have time for. So we'll just hand them one of those things. And by doing this, you make the company less dependent on some of the intern work, but you still give the interns something valuable to work on, because keep trying things and new ideas is also always valuable for a company. So, and yeah, of course, I just want to put this arrow and again say Rugbrødsarbejde, the non-sexy work, is really important, especially for young people getting into the industry of IT and product development. Could be moving stuff in Excel, and it could also be doing translations of stuff. So this is the key point. Based on our internship, we managed to have these streams spread out even for all interns starting with us. And this is the small gift I want to give you. We actually found something where we want to do this every time we get a design intern into our company. So how do we onboard our design interns in one day? We let them sit down, relax a bit, because it's probably pretty stressful to get into a new company. So they can sit down, listen to some music, and we ask them to go through the product. They should look at it as a user. They should document everything they find that is weird or they wanted to change if they created a product. They should present them and talk about why they documented them. And then we should pick a problem and try to solve it. So if we go through this line of tasks, this first one, this is a great way to get them introduced to our product. And I know that a lot of you listening maybe have a lot of different products. So please choose the least complex and the most easy for them to get into. Because if you choose some industry B2B product, they maybe need to have some learning for you. We are so lucky that we have the marketplace that are meant for every person on the planet. So hopefully it's easy for them to understand if we did our job correctly. And also, if you choose the least complex product, it's also extremely easy for them to look at it as a user. And this also shows me as a mentor how good are you as a designer to think as the user while navigating a product. The documentation part is also extremely important, because this shows if they can argue for their case and if they actually have good documentation skills. It could be a bug they found, it could be a flow that doesn't make sense for users. So how do they document it and how detailed are they? If they document small like pixel stuff, I also know as a mentor that I should probably get help from them doing more detailed pixel design work. But if they document flow stuff, like this flow doesn't make any sense because you want to end up here instead of here, maybe that intern can help me do more complex UX stuff. So it also helps me like seeing which intern I should use for what. And the presentation of stuff is extremely important. As a PM, all of you know. And also why you documented something is really important. Because if the arguments is way off, maybe we should start learning that throughout the internship. And then this ends up in the first small project where we pick a problem and try to solve it. There's a high motivation because you found the problem yourself. And there's a clear understanding. I, as a mentor, don't have to explain the problem because they found it themselves. So it's easy for them to get started on. But one really important note here is that you should always remember to communicate that this is just a concept. They're trying to solve something just for fun. We had some cases where they imagined the problem being solved by them and us sitting down and developing it. And we can't do that all the time. So please make sure to have clear communication that this is just a concept. So yeah, this is our structure of how we onboard interns. I went through it quite quickly because I can see that we're running out of time. But please have questions about the specific steps if you have any. And thank you so much for having me. If you guys are interested in seeing some of our work, I run an Instagram where I do a lot of design stuff and also showcase some of the design we do inside the company. And please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frederick. It was really informative. I really enjoyed learning how you can use interns in such an efficient way. A few questions I'll pick from the chat. I hope there will be more. At least I found the talk very inspiring. So I will have my own questions, and Christian probably has his own questions, but I would really like to hear from more of you guys. There's one from Mikael. If you identify areas of interns' work or competencies that drastically need to be improved, how do you give them constructive feedback?
That is really, really interesting. One of the things that we do a lot in BoligPortal, and also one of the things that creates this awesome work culture, is that we have these one-to-one meetings each second week. So because we have the opportunity to give feedback and receive feedback as a mentor as well, every couple of weeks, we are able to find these work areas where they maybe need to improve themselves. And then we actually use these concepts and trying new stuff. If we have something that is within detailed pixel work, and that is the area that we want to help them learn in, then we will give them concepts that are going to challenge them within that work area.
Makes sense. Any questions from you, Christian?
Yeah, I have
looking through the chat.
Yeah, I have a couple. So I've had, I think, 10 interns during my career in different companies, and also tried to kind of build this kind of methodology on how you could get a great internship, right? So that the intern both has this kind of growth on a professional level, but also on a personal level, so that, you know, they understand how it is to actually come into a company and work as part of a company, because that's for many of these young interns, it's a new thing, right? They never really worked in a company, not in this industry at least. And I really like the kind of way to look at, okay, what is a good internship? What is and kind of just rugbrødsarbejde or grunt work kind of.
Yeah, that would be a great word. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like that kind of way of looking at it, because that's a real thing. And I think one of my questions is, how do you estimate upfront if this person is able to go at it alone, or if this person really needs a lot of guidance? Because that's one of the things I've really had a trouble figuring out. Some people's it's really, it's really obvious, but for other people, it's really not that obvious if, this person is going to be a great intern because that person is really independent, or if this person really needs a lot of mentoring and would take so much of my time that it would be a bad investment from a company perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the most important thing is to find out if they're able to do this during the screening phase and before you get them into the company, because it's pretty hard saying that, but if you get them in, you're pretty much stuck to them for the rest of the internship. So one of the questions that I ask when we ask or look for new interns is that this work you're presenting me now, have you been doing this in a group, or can you show me something in this specific concept that you made, that you owned, that you created, and let's talk about that thing. And if they struggle to talk about the details, and if they have a hard time explaining the process of the work, then I can quickly figure out, okay, well, this person maybe needs a bit of guidance, and they probably haven't standed on their own legs for a lot of projects. So it's really, really important to find out before getting them into the company.
Yeah, awesome.
Krista, one probably last question from me before the closing remarks for this great international event. I was wondering, when you involve interns that often and in that great numbers, and in UI UX area, I'm wondering, do you have some solid design system that ensures that the improvisation is kept within some system, or do you really give them freedom to experiment at ease?
It's a really good question, and I wish that I could take Patrick in, my previous intern, because he yesterday closed our design system in Sketch because we just created it because we had that problem. We had a problem with people just doing weird stuff, creating new buttons that we have never seen before. But one of the things that I have been thinking about is also they should be able to play around if they want to. They should be able to present new components and new way of doing stuff if it's a better solution. So this shouldn't be locked down to a design system that I sit down and onboard them to for 2 days, and then they can only do stuff within that framework, because they should think outside the box. But yeah, we just created a design system that is within Sketch, and then also we have a storybook with development components to make sure that we don't use fonts that we don't have and don't make up buttons. And if we make a button that is not within our design system, we talk about it. So it gets a subject within our feedback sessions that, do we really want to commit doing a new way of navigating or headline or stuff like that? So yeah, we have a design system, we're working on it, but I just want to note that it's extremely important not to think you should only work within those limits. Yeah.
Cool stuff. Thanks a lot.
And there's also a question from Gino, as I can see here, that any tips on how to work with interns while working remotely? I think that's, if you have any experience with that for them.
Yeah. Now we are working totally remote. And so we unfortunately had to pause some internships, and now we are restarting some of those. So I'm very interested in your tips. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I don't have that much experience doing remote work because the previous intern, Patrick, he closed down his internship on the same day that we closed down Denmark. So we just had him as a student designer. But stuff like talking every day, having 5 minutes talk after lunch or kickoff meetings each week and stuff like that helps a lot. But I could imagine having to onboard an intern totally remote. You maybe have to do some documentation work. How does our design system work and stuff like that? Because you can't really go down to their desk and show them. You have to document way more stuff. Yeah.
Great. Guys and everybody online, I think I would like to close this fantastic international meetup for now and say thank you for joining. Thank you to our speakers, and thank you for everyone around the world listening in. The good thing about our events being all virtual is that if you have missed it online when we were live, then you can always go back to the Mind the Product channel on YouTube and watch all the amazing videos that have been produced today. And part of my agreement with Gino was that we are really treating this World Product Day as a relay of product tanks. So I'm happy to pass on the virtual baton to, of course, Product Tank Barcelona, who is teaming up with Hamburg, and I will add a link to that event in the live chat now. So if you still have some time on your hands, guys and girls, grab some drinks and head to yet another exciting product tank. Happy World Product Day! Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.